Hey, just breathe.
When you encounter someone who behaves with authentic kindness, who moves through the world with authentic kindness, it is a powerful, powerful experience, and it says so much about them. You're either dealing with someone who's very, very young, who hasn't been exposed to the darkness like a child, the purity, that pure, unsullied kindness of a child that knows no other way to be. And this is what's even more powerful, is when you encounter someone who moves in the world with authentic kindness, you're in the presence of someone who has walked through the darkness. You're in the presence of someone who has walked through the darkness and suffered and felt the pain and let that pain forge them. Let that pain be the thing that opened those wounds that they traveled to reach a place of self-love and therefore love of humanity. And that they did not let the darkness be a reason for them to close their heart. They walked through the darkness and they found a way to keep their heart open. You're in the presence of someone who has it is like they're like, it's going to be a young child, or it's almost like, I want to say, a revered elder, but it doesn't have to be an elder. If it's just, but it is someone who's walked through the darkness and they've kept their heart open. And not only that, they've made a choice. They've taken everything that they've experienced and they've used it as a reason deep in their soul. It is something that they use to choose to be kind on a moment by moment basis. They're constantly choosing kindness as their way of being in the world. There is something profoundly powerful about that. So when you encounter someone who moves through the world with authentic kindness, you are in the presence of a superstar. You're in the presence of someone who has walked through it, come out the other side, and is choosing to meet the world with open arms and an open heart. And there is perhaps nothing more magnificent or impressive or worth emulating than that.
Hetepu, I'm reading from the Book of African Spirituality. Today we're going to talk about the master story of African spirituality. In fact, this is a master story of all belief systems. Even though African spirituality is not a belief system, it is a system based on truth, based on seeing, rather than living by hearsay. The story has been copied so many times by every belief system that you can think of. And this is a story that was created by ancient Black Egyptians. It was created by Africans in the Nile Valley civilizations. This story has also been copied by Hollywood, so many times. You get Star Wars, you get The Lion King, so many stories. In fact, the word hero comes from one of the main characters here, Heru. And this story, is the essence of African spirituality, but many spiritual systems which have then created characters of their own, characters which were then deemed to be historical, but these characters are actually not historical. All of these characters are coming from this story. And we know that the story of Oser and Auset is not historical. And by saying historical, let me loosely describe that as in these are not people that walked the earth in flesh and blood. In African spirituality, these are forces of nature. There's only one force in existence, and that one force manifests itself in different forces. And its culmination is human beings. Its culmination is human beings, and we human beings actually embody all the forces of that one force which is in existence. And also to set the ground here before we go into this story, and even though the main character is Heru, but if you look behind the curtains, the core character of this story is Auset, the divine mother of Heru. She is the main character. She's the core character, rather, because throughout the whole story, she is the one who brings Oser and Auset, or rather Oser and Heru together. In one of the religions which are then copied, Mithraism. So what happened is that a lot of people went to Egypt. So many cultures conquered Egypt, and after conquering Egypt, they all came out with their own belief systems. And in antiquity, in order for you to get credibility, you had to claim that you went to Egypt. You had to claim that you went to ancient Black Egypt. Otherwise, nobody would take whatever belief system that you're coming up with seriously, because it did not originate in Egypt. It's like what we have right now. If, for example, I'm doing software engineering, in order to have credibility without even opening my mouth, if I say, no, I spent some time in Silicon Valley and I've got a degree from Stanford, that's it. Stanford University, that's it. People will not question what I say per se. So it's the same thing with. It's quite a surface level example, but it is the same thing with belief systems. You had to claim that your main character went to Egypt in order for that character to have credibility, even though those characters didn't exist. Historically, yes, the people, the uninitiated, have been hoodwinked into thinking that those characters existed, and they debate the color of those characters. No, it's you being hoodwinked. And coming back to the story, and I had to give this preamble so that you can understand how important this story is to the world and to African spirituality, and by understanding it, you will understand where everything comes from. And also another belief system, it's Mithraism. Mithra was the main character. The other belief system, I won't mention the recent ones for you know why, right? We don't want, I won't go into that. But the other ancient belief system which copied this was Serapis. Serapis was created out of this story, right? And Serapis, if you study Serapis and what Serapis becomes, you'd actually be shocked. Anyway, moving right along, it's quite a long story, and I'm reading from, and if you look at the book of African Spirituality, this story is written 4 times. So chapter 1 is a story, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. If you look at Book of Oser, the story is done 4 times because there are different angles of the same story, and each story teaches you something different. I'll end up calling this conversation the passion of Auset, all right? And Auset later becomes Isis. The Greeks call it Isis, but it's not Isis. There's no power in the word Isis. It's Auset. You must call things by their original language, original name. For example, Isis means nothing, whereas Auset means something. Auset, the word Auset means sit. Anyway, reading from verse 1 till verse, let me see, all the way to verse 36, and it's page 69 to page 74. I'll try and be quick so that I can then talk about the essence, the passion of Auset, right? One of the themes that I want to cover, of which I want to cover at the end, is the passion, how Auset is passionate in terms of, is passionate about Oser, the king, and she's a queen, right? And then she's also passionate about then giving birth to a son, divine birth to a son called Heru. And I must say again, it's not Horus. Horus, there's no meaning in the word Horus, but Heru has meaning. Anyway, reading from verse 1, here begins the cosmology as retold by another African sage from a different angle. O my brothers and my sisters, gather around me that I may tell you the wisdom story of the before time of the golden age, when the Neteru walked upon the earth with us. And here they're talking Neteru. Remember, Neteru are forces of nature. And the uninitiated, then they think that these Neteru, Anunnaki, were actual beings that walked the earth. No, they were not actual beings that walked the earth. It's an example in African culture. Even now it exists among the Nguni, amongst the Sutu, and, amongst all Africans all over the continent. We use stories to teach. These stories are not real, even though they teach a truism, but they're not real, actual characters that walked on earth. Anyway, so it's the same with the Sumerians. They were teaching because they are kin to us. They were teaching. These are stories meant to teach, but not actual characters. That stories meant to teach a particular belief or morality, because stories are easier to travel. Anyway, reading verse 3, know then that in those ancient days, long before even the grandfather of our king's grandfather was born, Oser, the great-grandson of Ra, sat upon the throne of the Neteru, ruling over the living world as Ra did over the Neteru. He was the first king, and his queen Auset was the first queen. They ruled for many ages together, for the world was still young, and grandmother Death was not as harsh as she is now. His ways were just and upright, referring to Oser, the king. He made sure that Ma'at is the law of nature, remained in balance, that the law was kept, and so Ma'at smiled upon the world. All peoples praised Oser and Auset, and peace reigned over all, for this was the golden age of ancient Africa, of ancient Black Egypt, Kemet. Yet there was trouble. Proud Set, the noble Set. Set is also called Seth, is also called Sutesh, and the Greeks, when they came and stole our stories, they called Set Typhonis, right? Hence Typhoon and Apophis. So many names. Set is also called the character Satan by others, of which I will not mention, but this is a force of nature. It's not a devil. It's not that character. Anyway, Set, the brother of Oser, he who defended the sun boat from Opep, the destroyer, was unsettled in his heart. He coveted the throne of Oser. He coveted Oser. He coveted the power over the living world and he desired to take it from his brother. This is where the story The Lion King is stolen from. Simba and the brother is jealous. Simba's brother is jealous of Simba. Anyway, moving right along, verse 6. In his dark mind, Set conceived of a plot to kill Auset and take it all from him. He built a coffin and inscribed it with wicked Hetepu that would chain anyone who entered it from escaping. Set took the coffin to the great feast of the Hetepu. He waited until Auset had made himself drunk on much beer, then challenged Auset to a contest of strength. Each one in turn would enter the coffin and attempt through sheer strength to break it open. Auset, sure in his power, yet feeble in mind because he was drunk, entered the coffin. Set quickly poured molten lead into the coffin. Auset tried to escape, but the wicked Hetepu held him bound, and he died. Hetepu is so-called spells, but it's incantations as it's called, but it's Hetepu, it's word of power. Verse 9, Set then picked up the box and held it into the Nile, where it floated away. Set claimed the throne of Auset for himself and demanded that Auset be his queen. None of the other Hetepu dared to stand against him, for he had killed Auset and could easily do the same to them. Great Ra turned his head aside and mourned. He did not stand against Set. This was the dark time. Set was everything his brother was not. He was cruel and unkind, caring not for the balance of Ma'at or for us, the children of the Hetepu. War divided Kemet, and all was lawless, while Set ruled in vain. Africans cried out to Ra, but his heart was hardened by grief, and he would not listen. Only Auset, blessed Auset, remembered us. Only she was not afraid of Set. She searched all of the Nile for the coffin containing her beloved husband. This is verse 12. I'm going to stop here. This is one of the reasons why I'm calling it the passion of Auset, right? Everyone, all men were scared of Set, but Auset, the queen, was the only one who challenged Auset. Auset was the only one who challenged Set. Moving on to verse 13. Finally, she found it in Byblos, lodged in a tamarisk bush that had turned into a mighty tree, for the power of Auset was still in him, though he lay dead. She tore open the box and wept over the lifeless body of Auset. She carried the box back to Kemet and placed it in the house of the Hetepu. She changed herself into a bird and flew about his body, the body of Auset, singing a song of mourning. Then she perched upon him and used a heka. Heka is, nowadays we call it magic, we call it incantations, we call it spells, right? The spirit of the dead Auset entered her, and she conceived and bore a son whose destiny would be to avenge his father. Verse 15, you know where this story is copied into another story. Anyway, moving right along, she called the divine child Heru and hid him on an island far away from the gaze of his uncle Set. She then went to Tehuti, wise Tehuti, who knows all secrets, and implored his help. She asked him for Heka that could bring Auset back to life. Tehuti, Lord of knowledge, who brought himself into being by speaking his name, searched through his book of Hekau, book of magic, so to speak, or spells or incantations. Verse 18, Tehuti knew that Auset's spirit had departed his body and was lost. To restore Auset, Tehuti had to remake him so that his spirit would recognize him and rejoin. Tehuti and Auset together created the ritual of life, that which allows us to live forever when we die. Ritual of life, verse 19, reason being and the importance of this is that in African spirituality, we do not acknowledge that people die forever, or rather what we say, what we acknowledge is that the body, the kat, what we call kat in Kemet, kat, kab, dies, right? But the ba, which is the soul, lives on. That is what we believe in. Verse 20. But before Tehuti could work the Heka, cruel Set discovered them. He stole the body of Oser and tore it into many pieces, scattering them throughout Kemet. He was sure that Oser would never be reborn. Yet Auset would not despair. She implored the help of her sister Nephet to guide her and help her find the pieces of Oser. Long did they search, bringing each piece to Tehuti that he might work Heka upon it. When all the pieces were together, Tehuti went to Ainpu, lord of the dead. Ainpu sewed the pieces back together, washed the entrails of Oser, embalmed him, wrapped him in linen, and cast the ritual of life. Pause. Ainpu, now called Anubis, is not Anubis once again, it's Ainpu. These are the original words. Right? Anubis means nothing, but Ainpu, the ancient Kemetic word, other name Apuat, means the opener of the way. They have meaning, right? Because these were African, it's an African language, right? African languages, the way we name things, we describe its motion or the sound that it makes. It's descriptive. When we name something, we describe the way the thing moves and we give it that thing or its function, its name, right? It's not meaningless names, right? The language, the names, African languages, ancient Black Egypt, the words, when we name something, it means something, right? It's a sentence, anyway, moving right along. Verse 24, when Oser's mouth was opened due to the ritual of life, his spirit re-entered him and he lived again. Yet nothing... Oh, let me pause. For example, Oser. The name Oser means, I think I've covered it in previous conversations. Os means sit. Ir, where the word iris comes from right now. It comes from the ancient Black Egyptian word ir, which means eye. So Oser means the seat of the eye. What does seat of the eye means? It means seat of consciousness in you. You contain Oser, the first of Oser, which is your soul. It's the seat of the eye, right? Anyway, chapter 25, yet nothing that has died, not even an eter, may dwell in the land of the living. Oser went to the Duat, the abode of the dead. Ainpu yielded the throat to him, and he became the lord of the dead. There he stands in judgment over the souls of the dead. He commends the acts of the just to the blessed land. But the wicked he condemns to be devoured by Amit. And in here, you see, we teach by stories. Hence, that's why the book of African Spirituality is a collection of stories, because these stories each hold nuggets of wisdom, right? In the previous conversations, we were talking about the different laws. I have not done this. I have not done that. Here, in particular, we learn that Ainpu, it says he commands the act of the just to the blessed land, but the wicked he condemns to be devoured by the Emet. And we were saying that Emet is symbolic of guilt, right? When your heart is heavy and you've done something which betrays your conscience and your heart feels heavy. The symbolism there was that the Emet beast eats your heart. But it's not a beast like a real beast. We were saying your emotions can eat your heart, right? Anyway, verse 27, when Set heard that Oser lived again, he was angry, but his anger waned, for he knew that Oser could never return to the land of the living. Without Oser, Set believed he would sit on the throne of the Neteru for all time. Verse 28, yet on a hidden island, Heru, the son of Oser and Auset, grew to manhood and strength. Set sent many serpents and demons to kill Heru, but he defeated them. When Heru was ready, his mother Auset gave him great Hekau to use against Set, and Tehuti gave him an eye empowered with Hekau. Going back to verse 28. Verse 28, this is where we get the story of the king sending, trying to kill the child, the divine child, Heru, that's born, right? This is where these stories are gotten from. Verse 30, Heru sought out Set and challenged him for the throne. Set and Heru fought for many days, but in the end, Heru defeated Set and castrated him. But Heru, merciful Heru, would not kill Set, for to spill the blood of his uncle would make him no better than he. Even after defeat, Set still maintained his claim to the throne, and Heru lay claim as the son of Oser. Here, the symbolism of this. Set, remember, in African spirituality, in reality, there is no devil. However, for Set, as mentioned in previous conversations, is a representation of the force of separation. In order to have creation, you need two forces. The forces that creates, binds things together, and the forces that separate, right, divides things. The force that separates is represented by Set and also Opep, right? Set in ourselves represents the ego, right? The ego is individualistic. The ego is all about me, I. The ego ignores the fact that the ego is greedy. The ego ignores the fact that you have to be communal because you are within a community, right? Ignores ma'at. That's what the ego represents. Now, in this story, even though Heru wins, right, defeats Set, even after defeat, he does not kill Set. The reason why he does not kill Set and why the ancient black Egyptian sages wrote the story in this manner is that they were teaching us that the ego per se is not evil, right? But it does not need to be killed. You do not need to kill your ego. You have to manage your ego. You have to rise above your ego. The Oser in you, which becomes Heru, the Heru in you has to overcome, win over, and defeat the ego and control the animal spirit, control the ego inside of you. Because this battle is happening actually inside of you. This battle is happening inside of you, in your mind. When the Greeks come to the Greeks and the Romans, they create psychology, and they take, I think it was Carl Jung who actually most importantly later on focuses on this. These are battles that are happening in your mind, in your psyche, right? In your mind. And as much as they're happening in your mind, that's looking at it from a micro perspective, but in a macro perspective, this is happening at a global level. Global level, this story, we know for the past 2,000 years, Set is in charge. That is the force, the ego is in charge, right? In the world. We just need to see outside, look outside in terms of what's happening. So Set is in charge. Heru is not in charge at the moment, right? Even though we know that we can see that people are slowly starting to see that they've been lied to. I mean, people are questioning the things they've been believing ever since they were born. They're starting to see the cracks, right? Not everyone. Few people are starting to see the cracks, which in a way is showing that Heru is born, right? Heru is born, still a baby. And yes, Set is obviously trying to take out Heru, the truth. We can see that. I mean, so-called cancel culture, which is very, very, how can I say, is very controversial, right? Cancel culture also cancels the truth. It's going to be used to cancel people who speak the truth, and show truth, right? That's how it's going to be used. It's one of the tricks that Set is going to use to cover the truth. But that wasn't the point. Normally, I don't speak about these things, in public, because that's not the point. The point for us is to awaken the Heru inside of us, inside each and every one of us. That is the point. And then we can deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. So what I wanted to emphasize in verse 31 is that even after defeat, Set still maintains that he still maintains the claim to the throne. So even when you become awakened, you will still have issues with the ego inside of you trying to take over, right? And make you not live according to my art. It's a continuous battle that Heru has to fight. Verse 32, and moving right along, the Neteru began to fight amongst each other, those who supported Heru and those who supported Set. Baneb Jetet leaped into the middle and demanded that the Neteru end this struggle peacefully, or Ma'at would be imbalanced further. He told the Neteru to seek the counsel of Neet. Neet is another force of nature, warlike, though wise in counsel, told them that Heru was the rightful heir to the throne. Heru cast Set into the darkness where he lives to this day. Verse 35, and so it is that Heru watches over us while we live and gives guidance to the Nesu, to the king, while he lives, and his father Oser watches over us in the next life. So it is that the Neteru are at peace. So it is that wicked Set, eternally strives for revenge, battling Heru at every turn. When Heru wins, Ma'at is upheld and the world is at peace. When Set wins, the world is in turmoil. But we know that dark times do not last forever, and the bright rays of Heru will shine over us again. In the last days, Heru and Set will fight one last time for the world. Heru will defeat Set forever, and Oser will be able to return to this world. On that day, the day of awakening, all the tombs shall open, and the just dead shall live again, as we do, and all sorrow shall pass away forever. This story is more than 30,000 years. We know that even though Egypt has been dated to be younger than what it is by Egyptologists, but that's political for reasons we know. Egypt is more than 30,000 years old, more than 26,000 years old, right? Or rather, the Nile Valley civilizations, let me be accurate. The Nile Valley civilizations are more than 26,000 years old, more than a precession, right? Verse 36 is quite interesting because it sounds like some of these, we know which stories copy this, right? But the importance of this story is that one must have the passion of Auset. And the passion of Auset is that Auset in this story, the queen, is brave enough, even when Oser is killed, she is the one who is brave enough to still look for Auset and fight for Auset, fight for the divine. And this is important in that each and every one of us on our journey of awakening, on our journey, the ancient black sages were teaching that one needs to be patient, one needs to be motherly, like a mother is patient with their child, and have the passion to awaken the Heru within themselves, to fight for the Heru within themselves, travel. She had to travel all over the world looking for Auset, right? To recover Auset so that Auset can recover what he had lost in terms of the kingdom, right? That story is important in so many layers. But what I wanted to highlight was the passion of Auset, that in your journey, you must have the passion of Auset in order to be able to awaken the Heru within you, the divine in you. And the laws of Ma'at are essentially what then governs your life, are an embodiment of what Heru becomes, right? So many other tools that are important in African spirituality, but the most important is to be able to live by Ma'at. And Auset represents those who came before us. And Auset also represents that link to those who came before us. And Heru within us represents the essence of the fact that those who came before us, their spirit still lives within us in a different form. And we must never lose that connection. And in the story, you also see that sometimes Set is in charge and sometimes Heru is in charge. However, it cycles. It cycles. There will be a time when Heru is in charge in the world again, where Ma'at governs the world again. But it starts with each and every one of us to be able to live Ma'at individually. It's not about proselytizing, trying to get 50,000 people, 100,000 people to live by Ma'at. It starts with you as an individual. And eventually, you will see the changes in your life. And also, with the difference with African spirituality, it's not about debating, which is why you'll see that in the different episodes, I do not spend a lot of time talking about these people copied Kemet. You know, you can find a lot of those episodes, well, not episodes, like videos of people who try and cover that. We do not cover that here because, yes, these things were copied from African spirituality, but that does not help us become Heru. To become Heru, you have to practice. You have to practice. You have to do the work. And that's what is important. In order to be able to build pyramids, you have to do the work that the people who built pyramids did. And Kemet is the canon of African spirituality. No other region, Nile Valley civilizations and Nile Valley stories are the canon of African spirituality. It's classical African spirituality. Hetepu.
Hey, just breathe.